And from there on, it was like a journey of discovery, discovering myself, discovering who I am, discovering my life purpose, discovering my values in life. And it's been an amazing journey, but it was also a journey that was an up and down. It's hard to navigate that kind of realm if you're not sure of who you are and where you come from and your life values.
Welcome back to another edition of COVID-19 from Crisis to Creation here on Mentalhealth TV. I'm Patricia Falco Beccalli, your host. Today we're going to look at a phenomenon I see more and more, and sometimes I feel also more and more, and that is anxiety. I mean, look around you. Everything seems to be kind of on fire, chaotic, and definitely in crisis. We have political upheaval apart from the COVID-19 crisis. We do have economic inequality. And of course, we also have the climate change issue still upon us. But does every day really need to be a struggle? Does every day need to be, okay, I have to find something to pick me up? Or do we find some solace, some letting off, some happiness on a daily basis from different sources than, let's say, the reality that surrounds us at the moment we call crisis? Well, in order to find out some answers to these questions, I invited a spiritual teacher and author, Eiman Al Zaabi, to the show. She wrote the book, Finding Grace, Daily Comfort for Uncertain Times. Eiman, thank you very much for being with us here on Mentalhealth TV. Welcome.
Thank you, Patricia, for having me here. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, well, listen, I read through your CV. You're an incredible lady, having had, a long personal journey, and then finding your way into what you're doing right now, which is, of course, being a spiritual teacher, a life coach, somebody that can really turn things around on a personal level as a coach as well. And I want to know, as a first question, how did you really start the journey? Why did you feel that life coaching, being a spiritual teacher and guide is your purpose?
That didn't happen automatically, as you know, with those people who live their life purpose. It's always like that life events bring you to that moment of realization. But generally, I had suffered from anxiety disorder, panic disorder, and depression for, let's say, 7 years of my life. And during that time, it was kind of like living hell for me to be experiencing panic attacks on a daily basis. And I didn't know any better. And I would go to a psychologist and say to him, I have these thoughts in my head, I want them to stop. And he says, tell them to stop. And I'm like, you have no idea what I'm going through. And I knew that, medical establishment had no answer for me. So I stopped my medications and I went into the realm of, let's say, personal development, seeking for answers. And from there on, it was like a journey of discovery, discovering myself, discovering who I am, discovering my life purpose, discovering my values in life. And it's been an amazing journey, but it was also a journey that was an up and down. It's hard to navigate that kind of realm if you're not sure of who you are and where you come from and your life values. And so I've come to a place where I've kind of developed my own sense of spirituality, my own sense of understanding of the world that I talk about in my book. So some of the ideas you'll hear will be pretty much unconventional. They're not what you would see in the commercial, self-help type of books, but they pretty much come from deep understanding of the self, of discovery of who I am, and also my work with the clients that I work with. And that's where I kind of digest life experiences and come up with a spiritual understanding of how things are.
Yeah. You were saying you have some tools included without rather unconventional. Now, spirituality is something that I'm very much into. And one thing you definitely learn is to quieten your mind. And that is something that I stumbled over. You say exactly the opposite, Eiman. You say your mind is your ally, not your enemy. But that's exactly what sometimes drives us wild, is our mind. Those thoughts that seem to be going round and round.
Yeah, that was like an interesting, let's say, concept that I've come to understand through my journey in spirituality, in which, you know, my mind was a source of my own agony, right? It was a source of my own suffering. As I said, you know, I told my psychologist, like, I have these thoughts. They are so scary. They trigger me. They bring panic into my life, right? And I couldn't make them stop. But then the minute you understand that anxiety and these thoughts are actually a trapped energy that wants to come out, it's pretty much a creative energy you're using against yourself by scaring yourself. Instead of using that to kind of go outward and find purpose, find meaning and inquiry and ask questions. And so what in my journey of finding myself, I had to find or rechannel that energy of the crazy, chaotic mind into a different realm of asking questions, of finding answers, of really, truly going onto the path where I found God and found myself. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the path where you channel the mind energy instead of allowing it, seeing it as the enemy, and seeing it as the thing that needs to be shut down, when it's actually God's most precious gift to all of us.
And we'll get to that, these thoughts being the most precious gift. If you say, you know, work with your mind, and you say inquire, does that mean, you know, from a practical point of view, Eiman, that you say, okay, I have these thoughts, you step back, you become conscious, and then you ask, why do I have them? Where do they come from? And how can I, you know, use them, as you were saying, in a purposeful way?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I would mean by inquiry, but it is actually twofold. So there is an inner inquiry that you make because you want to reach to, because harmony is the actual state of all things, right? And to get to a state of harmony, you would ask these questions to neutralize those things, to get them to stabilize. And the inquiry will allow you to say, okay, I have this thought because I'm scared, right? Or I have this thought because I am so upset with the way this person treated me. And you ask the next question would be like, all right, what would be the most appropriate response, right? And the next question would be, and then you would be on your way to kind of opening up to a space which is a lot more harmonious, a lot more spiritual, a lot more balanced, right? And so the other side of inquiry to me, and that's what I write about in my first book, The Art of Surrender, is the inquiry into life purpose, the inquiry into the soul, the inquiry into understanding God and your spiritual context and why we're here by asking the big questions of life. And I teach that inquiry is actually sits in the intersection between what is spiritual and what is mundane, what is here now, and what could be beyond that, right?
Yeah.
And this is your doorway into really understanding the life that we are, you know, kind of seeking to find, the precious life that we're all seeking to find.
Yeah, and you write in both of your books. I also read the other one about connecting with the divine. Now, that is something that for people that are neither religious or spiritual is kind of like, yeah, blah, blah. I always say, you know, coming from business, you're faced with, business ideas, you're faced with strategies, you know, but the question always is the how, all right, the implementation. So connecting with the divine, and there was also a fabulous quote, I'm going to try to find it for our conversation as well, when you say that connection is exactly which brings then not only equilibrium, but you know where you're going. But how do you establish a connection when you are so lost in the moment, in the situation?
From my experience, I'll speak, is that's how I've done it through a really deep prayer that went out from my heart, asking God to show me the way and to show me the bridge, to show me where I could go next. Right, to bridge where I'm here to where I see me as being fully connected to God. Right, I believe that the self, the human self, can fully thrive, fully open up in the presence of the divine. Right, and that to me is the ultimate spiritual life, in which you know God is there, and which you are acting as though God is there, and allowing Him to guide your life, allowing Him to take you where you need to go, right? And so the way it happened is through prayer, and then I went through a journey of inquiry. I questioned my own religion. I questioned every other religion. I've had, research into looking at other spiritual practices and stuff like that. But I didn't kind of look into them by saying, I want to embrace this, as much as I said, let me look into this and ask questions about them. And in asking questions, I was able to evaluate what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. Does this resonate with me? Does this not resonate? And going, and I, of course, came back full circle to my own religion saying, this is the path that I want to take. This is where I'm going next.
Let me quickly interrupt the conversation to say thank you that you are here with me on the channel. If you do enjoy what I'm putting out, the in-depth kind of conversations, then why don't you subscribe and also hit the bell button so I can keep you informed with our newest releases. Thanks for that in advance, and let's get back to the conversation. And moving on from, your mind, which we discussed at the beginning of our conversation, Eiman, to the inner voice. You also speak about the inner voice, and there is exactly my question, trusting the inner voice. We are not born, and then we are not really taught to listen to it. We are born with these kind of inner voices, but they don't come from, the prefrontal cortex. They come from inside, which is perhaps what we call, the soul speaking to you, the divine speaking to you, the energy just wanting to get out. But how do we really, listen to it and then really say, like you said, I trust this. I inquired. I got answers, which I heard in the first place, and now I trust I'm on the right path.
Right. This is a very interesting and tricky place to be, which is to kind of be in the space where you're hearing something from within, right? And it takes practice to develop what I call the line and channel of communication, right? And to understand that within you lies the seed of truth. Within you, there is all truth of everything that is in this universe. You've come from this place. You've come from the realm of truth, the realm of God, to here, understanding that you have it all and you have all the answers, right? And so by looking at those questions and asking the questions, you're opening a channel of communication from within. And it takes practice to open to that, and takes practice to even distinguish what that is from ego or whatever interfering consciousness that exists out there.
Yeah.
And then to know that this is the voice of your own soul, and to know that it's guiding you forward, right? And it's not going to tell you about what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to tell you, like fortune tell you about the future. But what it would do is say, these are my needs, right? And this is what I want next. This is the direction I'd like you, the most authentic way you should move forward in life, right? And it's all about aligning to that which is truthful, that which is within you, and moving with that, right? If you see me wearing colors, that's because I believe in colors, and my soul kind of loves that, loves colors, painting, flowers, all that stuff, right? So it's a reflection. And that has come from the understanding of inquiry and who I am from within.
Yes,
right?
And that plays very much into, the power of thought and the power of intention, where you channel yourself towards a certain action and choice.
Yeah, and that's what I call living life by design, right? To live life by design is to understand who you are from within and to understand your life values and express those values in the outside. So beauty is a life value of mine, to understand that I have to live in a beautiful place and make sure it looks beautiful, right? So that's an expression of from within. Freedom is another one. Honesty is another one. So those are, things that kind of make me up from within. It's like your, let's say, spiritual makeup and genetic makeup that you have to kind of find out for yourself and live without, allow it to be in your life.
Yes, and I think in your first book, you call them the soul needs.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, which is the 3 needs of wanting to find and connect to God, to express and to be. And the beingness is basically being in those values, right?
Yeah, and the concept of surrender, which your second book is based on the first book, and the first book is called The Art of Surrender with a subtitle. But okay, now growing up in more or less an Anglo-Saxon world, surrender is not something that enters the equation on your usual, this is the way you should lead your life kind of guidance, be it from the parents, be it from, the onset of kindergarten. It's all about, you do not surrender, you do not give up, you know where you want to go, and you just motor on in the kindest possible way, of course, but you do not give up. And giving up is for losers. So where do you actually see, or how do you describe it to somebody that does not know what the art of surrender is, and tell him it's not about giving up, it's actually about something very different?
It is absolutely, as you said, it's something very different. It is the understanding of your overall life path and surrendering that to your creator. And then you wake up every day, do the work you're supposed to be working, and have a vision, have a life, have an understanding where you want to go, but understand that, there are doors that are going to be opening and doors that will be closing, and everything happens in that is for your best interest, right? Understanding that, when you're surrendering your day, surrendering your life to a greater creator, to somebody or some being that knows who you are, that knows you from the moment you are in your mother's, as an embryo in your mother's womb, to the time of your death and going back to him. In that, like arch of life, he is guiding you. It's not like God creates and then leaves and let go, right? God is always active in every person's life, regardless who you are, what is your background, and what is your religion, and whoever you are. Right?
Yeah, that is so difficult to learn because, again, I was very much raised by it's all up to you. It's your choice. Your choices have consequences, and just make sure you think about it right and you have the right targets. And this sense of, well, c'est la vie, God, the divine, the energy, the bigger, the greater that there is going to just guide me. It has always been kind of, yeah, sure, but just know consciously what you want and go for that.
Right. And absolutely, the two go together. That's how I see it. The two go together. You have to get up and show up, do the work, feel in control of your life and where you're going. But with the understanding that if doors open or close, it's okay.
Exactly. And that there is...
Let you, exactly, the spiritual context or the spiritual understanding of life will carry you forward, right? Because if you fail, you'd say it was all me, right? Mm-hmm. And if you fail, you'll say like, I'm a failure. I didn't do well. Instead of seeing that, what, God has closed this door because he wants me to go this direction and I should find this out, right?
No, I've been studying Kabbalah for more than 4 years now, and that approach is very much exactly that actually it's pain, suffering, the difficulties, overcoming the difficulties is exactly that which makes us evolve, and also where we are being guided into the right direction, because pain hurts, so you move away from it or you overcome it somehow in order to, find your path.
Yes, and pain and pleasure are the two things that move us in life, right? Yeah. But to understand things can also go beyond pain and pleasure. There's the pursuit of life purpose, and whatever that takes, whether that being pain or pleasure, you gotta do it, right?
Absolutely. Okay, Eiman, let's turn the page and let's look how to apply, your credo, what you're teaching, the approach to life, to surrender, to pain, to creating really something special out of crisis, perhaps, or out of anxiety. And look at the business context. A lot of my community comes from finance, comes from business, and this is where we spend most of our lives. Most of the time is in a business context, sometimes as leaders, CEOs, or managing directors, sometimes as employees, but we're always in a social context where you can definitely feel when there's low motivation, when there's anxiety, especially now during COVID-19, people are afraid to lose their jobs or have lost their jobs or know they will lose their jobs in a few months' time if things won't change. Tell me a little bit about applying your tools, and I want to call them spiritual tools, in a business context for a leader. What should a leader right now really take from what you have to offer to get her team through these anxieties. Well, that wraps up the first part of my conversation with Eiman Al Zaabi about her work and her latest book, Finding Grace, Daily Comfort for Uncertain Times. I hope you'll join us for the second part.